and I'm the Maintenance Blacksmith. Today we're going to talk about the box locks and the keys that are all over the historic area. Oh, by the way, this is a two-part video. Part one is going to be about the locks and the keys and how to use them and get the best use out of them without damaging the keys or the locks. I know the locks look pretty large and the keys look pretty large, but they can still be damaged and fairly easily. So we have to be careful with them. And remember, these locks are, some of them are over 200 years old, still in use. And I'm the guy that works on them. I'm also the guy that makes the keys or repairs the keys for those locks. So I would appreciate your help by observing a little extra care when you're using those locks. So what does a maintenance blacksmith do? Well, when you see the carpenters working in the historic area, they are maintaining the buildings, obviously, but I'm the guy that repairs the hardware, that makes their nails, repairs the keys, the locks, as I had said, and other various things that require a blacksmith or a welder or any sort of metal fabrication. And the board behind me are representations of items that come out of this shop that either I have to fabricate or repair. So just look for this door, and that is the entrance to the sheet metal shop and to the blacksmith shop. So here we have an 18th century lock. Okay. It may be 18th century, it may be a very good reproduction. It may have come from the Anderson shop years ago, I don't know. It's been in our shop for years. I did a little bit of work on this so that I could get it to work, so I could use it to demonstrate. One thing that's important when you're using these types of locks is the key needs to go in perpendicular. Okay? Now this key is not specifically for this lock, but it was altered so that it would work. If you will notice, there is a bit of a discrepancy between this shoulder and the keyhole. Normally, there would not be any kind of space there because this shoulder is to prevent that key from being pushed in too far. I can use it this way because I know better. But if you don't know what it looks like inside and how far that needs to go, if you push beyond where you're supposed to, you will end up not being able to open the lock. Then you take a chance on bending one of these bits or breaking it off, or even worse, inside, damaging the ward plate. So here we are, and this is the inside of a typical 18th century lock. You see the ward plate here, and you see those little lines on either side. See that one's damaged? That has been forced. So now let's take the key and insert it into the lock. Now you see how it performs with the ward plate. The ward plate allows it to be turned. If that didn't have that division between the two pieces of the bit, it wouldn't turn at all. Now let's flip her over. And you see how it fits in. That's usually what you see. And she turns. So this is an example of a lock with its wards. This is the ward plate, and these are the wards. You have one going around the center, as in, see this key here has that opening down near the main shaft, okay? And then it also has a couple wards right here. Now if you notice, the other one had damage to where the wards were, and the wards are gone. See, that's where a ward was, and that's where a ward was, and it just got completely ripped out. And that happens from using a wrong key or using excessive force. Wrong key could bend the ward, and then you try the right key and the ward is bent, so it doesn't work, and you end up breaking it. I'm sure that the key for it was broken as well. So what are some of the other things that can damage these? Well, you know, if you take this, if you drop this key and it hits the pavement or a rock or something hard, you can bend these bits, okay? If you put it into the key too fast, repeatedly, years and years and years and years and years of jamming that key in will ultimately cause this to bend. Let me show you. So here are a couple examples of older keys that have been pushed into the locks, and a lot of times you see this is because someone got in a hurry and they kept hitting this down here, okay? And you do that multiple times, time and time again, it's going to have an effect on that. And the closer that gets, the harder that becomes to turn through the ward plate. Then, eventually, you end up with something like this. Now this one is this way because someone got impatient and pulled it out prematurely. So, you need to take your time. You'll have a much more harmonious outcome. So here I have a representation of a ring for one of the larger buildings that requires multiple keys, like the Governor's Palace, the Capitol, a few others, and they require multiple keys. And you know, you have them all put together on a ring. Now, of course, this is just a hook, so they can be taken off. However, when they're banging against each other and then dropped, they're more likely to be damaged as well. One of the other things that will make it difficult when you have a lot of keys on a ring, gravity is naturally going to want to pull this down while you're putting it into the lock. Well, the lock is designed for it to go in perpendicular. So if you're not perpendicular, you're not going to hit that ward plate properly and not be able to turn it. And then when you force it, that breaks the keys. Now many of these locks, as I have shown you, this lock here, it has a nice crisp keyhole. Many of them are wore out because they are over 200 years old. So in order to get them to work, you kind of have to pick up on the key and guide the key. And do it carefully. And you'll save the foundation money by not having to get those keys fixed constantly. I understand it's still going to happen, but a word to the wise. So here in the foundation, we have a mix of original locks and manufactured locks by various manufacturers, by various vendors over a almost 100-year period of time. And some of these locks we can't get parts for anymore. I guess I should say all of these locks we can't get parts for anymore. So it's up to me to fabricate new parts or springs or creative ways to keep them to continue to work. A good example is this lock that I've been using as an example. This has a bar in it that's underneath here. I'm not going to bother showing it to you, but it was destroyed. So I made a new part for it so that the key would work the lock. Not always the case. A lot of times it is impatience or other unknown events that damage the lock and or the key. So I'm asking you for your assistance. Now, I'm here to fix things. That's my job. But things that have to come back and back and back because of improper use, impatient use, or force, unnecessary, cost the foundation and your department money.
This is what a proper key looks like for one of these 18th century locks. This is what a key looks like when, well, the lock is broke and someone decided to turn the key and use as much force as they could in order to try to get the lock to open, instead of calling for someone to repair it. This is the lock. Now, this lock came directly out of the historic area, and I haven't opened it up yet. So you get to see what I get to see. How damaged it is. Okay. All right, we're going to have to come back to this here in a second while I figure out how I'm going to get into it. I think I may have to throw a little heat on these two pieces here and take this plate off, because normally this is the plate that I take off. Be right back. Well, in order to get this off, I had to use an oxyacetylene torch because someone brazed it. Probably because over the years, from working on this lock, it has had to be opened and closed and opened and closed and opened and closed. If you're working on a lock that's 200 years old, you know occasionally it's going to have to be opened and repaired. Now that we are this far, do you see this little thing here? That little thing is one of these little things. And there's another one down inside. I have to disassemble this whole lock in order to get the parts out and find out why it's not working. Oh, that's not good. Well, there's the other part. All right. Now, I want you to see something. Where's the can? There we go. There's the lenses. Now, do you see these plates should be perfectly parallel to one another, but one of them is concave. This is because someone has forced that key in here and bent it. Either they put it in not far enough or too far or whatever, and they bent this plate. And then they tried to turn the key after having bent this plate, and they broke off the middle. Then someone came back through and tried to use the key on it again, and what did they do? Oh, well, lo and behold, they broke the end off, because this is supposed to have enough room for that to go through. You see, it shouldn't stick like that. Using a bigger hammer is not always a good idea. Then it has to come to me, and I have to straighten all this stuff out and get this thing working. Okay, now that I have corrected the issue, oh, look at that. Isn't that sweet? Yes, that's the way it's supposed to work. All right. So now I have to get it back together. Okay, so now I've soldered that back in, or brazed, and I'll have to flip it over. I gotta go cool it off now. All right, so now let me show you. Key goes in. This is here as a stop. That's why there's this shoulder. See this shoulder here? To stop that key from going in so that it runs through the ways properly. You see that? And that lifts that little bar. So that lifting of the bar is what allows this key to move the bolt. So if you put it in one way, it works one. Put it in the other way, works the other. Now you see this back plate, it's all wonky. It's collapsed. It's okay right here where the key goes through, but it's been beat, battered, and bruised. So I'm going to straighten it out a little bit before I braze these back into place. See how this goes in? Goes right in like that. And then it turns. Now you notice that the key is perpendicular to the lock. If you're putting the key in and it's dragging down like that, you need to lift it up so you can turn it so it can stay perpendicular. It should not be at an angle, and that's why a lot of these other ones get tore up, because folks are using it like a modern key. A modern key, you put it in, it stays where it's supposed to go, you turn it, and it's done. Easy peasy. This is easy peasy too. You just have to remember that when you put this key in, it needs to be perpendicular to the lock. And that way it will work without any problem, unless there's something broken inside. Put something in there that's broken and try to get a broken key to work, you could do more damage, which is why this lock is in here. Now we're going to find out if that did what needed. Oh yes. Oh, that's great. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put these slide bolts back in where they belong. Okay, so I'll place that weight there because I want to try to get this fairly tight. Okay, now let's try it. Trying it from the back side. Now, even I have to make sure that I get that in their proper spot. Okay, that works. Flip it around. This is a really weird one. And that works. That's from the back. Now let's flip it over. And it's dirty right now, don't worry about that. We'll clean that up. First thing is, it needs to work. Okay, that one works. Things can be cleaned up later. Okay, and that one works. Okay, so it works now. It works properly. And you saw I even had to work with it gently to make sure that the keyways went through the keyway plate. You've got to be gentle with it, okay? Forcing it only causes more damage. Okay, there you go. It's put back together and it's ready to go back out.